welcome to Carousel, where I hop on the carousel and take a horse around and look for interesting people on interesting subjects with interesting things to say. And if you've been with us for a while, you know we've had discussions about the first spy satellite for the United States with Marty Yellen, who also talked about cancer and cancer cells. We had Bob Goldshow, who was an announcer for the New York Nets and was on WPXI and WCBS doing announcing. We had Jack Rice and Nancy Cross, two clowners who go to Stanford Hospital and entertain the patients and the staff there. And John Hetherington, former state legislator for Connecticut. And today I have a very, very special guest, moving out from science and clowning, although we might clown around a little bit, and those other things, into jobs, work, school, things that are really important to everybody. And this person is very special, especially to me. She is someone who has an amazing background in both her education and in her jobs. She went to Michigan and Harvard, and she has worked literally all around the world. But we'll get into some of those details. She does a lot of pro bono work, helping people who are in need of help, and business work also. And I'm talking about none other than my daughter, Tami Kesselman. Hi.
Hello.
Nice to see you here.
Well, thank
Tami.
you.
Well, thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited.
Very good. Tell us a little bit about the kinds of things that you do and the kinds of places that you've been.
Well, those are two different vast questions.
Yeah.
The kinds of things that I do right now range from working with, I mentor individuals that are going to school or looking at going in between undergrad and graduate school and trying to figure out where to go and how to get where they want to go. I mentor a lot of social entrepreneurs, which are entrepreneurs that are working in something in the social space. So maybe for-profit, maybe non-profit, but in an area that people have traditionally thought of as non-profit and giving back. And then I do some projects with the UN on the United Nations on leveraging mobile for development, and have been working on collaborations between a lot of different big public sector and private sector partners to bring people together to make their missions happen better and bigger.
Well, I know that's only a small part of the things you do. You didn't mention the youth conferences and activities
Right.
of that nature, but maybe that's for some other time. At any rate, let's talk about where you have worked in this world.
Sure.
Just places.
Places on the planet.
Places on the
So
planet.
let's see. Well, in Connecticut, doing internships at my father's wonderful Xerox every summer in college. And then in Michigan with part-time jobs, but then I moved on to the real world and worked in between Michigan and Harvard. I worked in Brazil for something called the UN Commission on Environment and Development, which is no longer around, but was a precursor to all of the current environmental work the UN does. And actually before that, right when I graduated from Michigan, I worked in Brussels for an organization called AIESEC International that's still very much alive today, and I'm very actively involved as an advisor to them. They have 86,000 students in 113 countries, and I was on the board of AIESEC International in Brussels, and then did two traineeships through them in Italy.
Let's digress.
Yes.
And talk a little bit about AIESEC and AIESEC International.
Sure.
What they do and what you do with them.
So,
then we'll come back to the rest of the world that you've, or the planet you've been
absolutely.
on.
So AIESEC, for a couple years now, I've been on the advisory board for AIESEC Yale, which is really exciting. It's working with young kids who are 18 to 21 who are trying to figure out where they want to fit in the world to give back and get leadership skills. And then, and in working with them, I've now actually, as of this month, I'm going to be joining the board of directors of AIESEC International, or AIESEC US, for all of AIESEC in the US. And I also am the representative to AIESEC globally for the United Nations to help figure out where to insert AIESEC students in different conferences around the world.
Well, this obviously goes with your mentoring. Now, AIESEC takes students from one country and puts them in jobs. So it's really economic in some other country.
Right, short-term jobs to help them
jobs.
understand both the cultural exchange and develop their business skills. And with now it's actually 107 countries and 6 territories. So things like Hong Kong, of course, or Puerto Rico are not countries, but they're very different than the countries that they're in. So they're considered separate countries in AIESEC.
Okay, so after your AIESEC experience, both in Brussels and in Italy, where else have you been?
After that, well, with AIESEC, when I was working there, right after undergraduate, I was fortunate enough to be selected as a trainer for an international congress in Egypt, and then for a regional Middle Eastern conference in Tunisia. So meeting and working with the student presidents from all the different local committees around North Africa and then around all of Africa.
I can tell you, as your father, that I'm glad you're not doing that right now.
Yes.
Unfortunately for the world.
Amazingly, by the time this airs, they will all be safely back. But this week, we have a delegation of 11 students from the entire AIESEC, most of the AIESEC US board, as well as local committee presidents that are in Sharm el-Sheikh, with 1,000 other delegates from over 100 countries this week. And it was a very big board decision, actually, to decide to let them go. But we thought it was really important because it's such an amazing cultural experience, and Sharm el-Sheikh seems to still be very safe.
Well, I hope it's merely a cultural experience.
Yes.
And then from there?
And from there, what did I do? Well, when I was from there, I went to to Brazil, and met when I was there. And this goes back to kind of the job search and figuring out where you want to be long term and how to get there. I think to step back, when I was at Michigan, I decided my senior year that I wanted to go to Harvard because I'd gone on a visit with my brother who had friends there, and didn't have the grades to get in, but decided that I knew I was meant to go there and would do whatever was the most fun in the moment that best aligned me to get into Harvard. So that informs kind of how I went and did all these AIESEC things and traveled the world doing strategy and representing all these students. Then went and worked in Brazil. And then from that, while I was there, met all of the senior environmental officers of Fortune 50 companies and said, what do I need to do and how can I leverage what I'm doing here to help represent environmental interests of corporations, because I saw so many nonprofits and governments down there. And they got me an internship with the US affiliate of the International Chamber of Commerce, which then got me working in New York, but traveling to the OECD in Paris and other places with my mentor before Harvard. And then the rest of my travel came after.
So, and I guess this is part of your mentoring for students, you set a goal. In this case, your goal was to get to Harvard, graduate school. And then you figure out different things that might be good to get you in there, but the different things you're doing are both helpful and interesting.
Yes.
And fun, if possible.
Yep.
And it worked for you.
Yeah, to me, and as you know, I lost a friend or relative a year from when I was 10 until a couple of years after college. It was pretty much one a year, sometimes my age and sometimes older relatives, but it was this constant reminder that life is short and you have to do whatever's the most fun in the moment and balance that with whatever makes the most sense long term. And that really informed even in my very directed goals to make sure that I was always doing whatever was the most fun in the moment of the options that best positioned me for what I wanted next.
So you worked in Washington, you worked in Boston, you got through Harvard, which apparently was fairly easy in the end.
Exactly, it kept me busy. I did a lot of activities when I was there. I did crew, I was the president of the graduate council for all 9 grad schools and a bunch of other things. But yes, it was a good experience.
And in crew, you were a coxswain.
I was not. I coxed for the Learn to Row boat, and there's nothing like having a Learn to Cox person on the Learn to Row boat. So we came very close to bridges and sand dunes, but I actually rowed. I was the 7th seat because I was very flexible. So as much as I didn't have the height, I had the extension and the reach.
Because I just want to be clear that it would be hard for a child of mine to be athletic enough to be actually on the crew or doing the hard work.
Exactly. Well, I wasn't on the first boat. The first boat all rowed varsity undergrad. That was not me. I was with the ones who decided that if we were going to be in Cambridge, it was time to learn to crew. So it was a slightly easier. We had the 3 p.m. slots as opposed to the undergrads at Harvard who take it much more seriously and have the 6 a.m. slots. And I would not have been on that crew for a variety of reasons.
I could vouch for that. So after you graduated from Harvard?
After I graduated from Harvard, it was kind of the same as getting into Harvard. I figured out where I wanted to go that everyone said I didn't have the background for, but I was pretty sure I belonged there. And I went to Bain & Company Consulting. It was with all the consulting firms I met with, really the best fit for me, just personality-wise and interesting work that they were doing. But they had never hired a non-MBA, and I actually went to the Kennedy School and have an MPA. So I went all the way through the resume, all the way through the interview process, and then was told that because I had a non-traditional background, I was really close and they really liked me, but I'm sorry I didn't get it. So I waited a week and I thought about it, and then I was really kind of irked by this. So I called up the director's most senior person, who was my final round resume interview. And it was clear from the feedback I'd gotten that they said personality-wise, great fit. On the cases, I did really well. And that was the only concern. So I said, if that's the concern, I have this proposition for you. What if I come in the summer? We have the summer to mutually assess it. Don't give me an offer yet. And when it turns out it works, then give me an offer in the fall. And he laughed. He thought it was kind of crazy because it's actually harder to get in as a summer associate than in the fall. But he was, he and others he talked to were so amused that it was exactly what they want in a consultant. You see a problem and you figure out how to think out of the box to solve it. So they let me come in the summer. I turned down other real offers and did that, and sure enough, before the end of the summer, it converted to a full-time offer.
When we talk about how you mentor students and how you mentor people looking for jobs, if I don't remember, try to come back to how you got into Michigan and Harvard and that, because that's very relevant. So with Bain, I know you went to Dallas, and then you got international, and they sent you to the cold lands.
They sent me. I did a case in a plant. I guess I shouldn't say in public what our clients were, but it was a big manufacturing plant in Chatham, Ontario for 5 months, including all winter. With midweeks, we'd have to go to the U.S. corporate headquarters in Chicago. There's nothing like living in Dallas and flying every Monday morning or every Sunday night, so you could be there when the plant shift started at 8 a.m. to Detroit to drive 2 hours across the border in the snow to Chatham, and then midweek drive to Detroit and fly to Chicago. So I got to know a lot of the gate agents really well because generally flights were delayed.
And then you eventually left Bain and joined
American Express.
And there you worked in, just tell me the places.
It was pretty simple. Just New York, Sydney, and Hong Kong.
Australia, and Hong Kong.
Yep.
Tough life.
I kept it simple. I traveled a little bit. I made it to Bentonville, Arkansas, home of the famous Walmart, to work on a project. I was putting together a team with some marketing people down there.
So you haven't worked in Antarctica?
Not yet.
In Greenland?
There's still time. And Iceland.
There's still time.
I hear Iceland's a little bit more green than Greenland these days.
So tell me about the kind of people that come to you, and then we'll try to feed back to some of the things you've done and the advice you give to help them out.
Sure. Well, I mean, even just in the last 2 weeks, I have people, so I've co-chaired the Youth Assembly at the United Nations, a couple of them over the last couple years. And so through that, I end up with people, especially volunteers and interns on the staff, who, for the fact that they work for free, I try and when they call and say, hey, can you give me advice, to at least be able to give back in that way. And a lot of them are amazing people who come from all different backgrounds and have gone to either great schools or are currently in school and just at this crossroads where they have so much potential and they've already kind of put it out there that they're willing to work for free to improve their resumes and to really be doing something in the longer term. So I work with them on figuring out exactly where they want to be in the 5-year plan. So for example, one woman who I spoke with last week is graduating from one of the international programs at Columbia and is looking at, as many people are, like lots of different job opportunities with pros and cons and salary and amount of time that in the day that you work. Is it a 12-hour day or an 8-hour day? And do you own your travel schedule or not? And is looking specifically at some corporate jobs versus UN type versus consulting. And my advice to her, I give often, is if you can get the consulting job and family-wise, you can be okay with for a year or two at least, doing 10 to 12-hour days, you take the consulting job first because from that you can go to anything else, and it's such a great foundation. Like I still pull from how I look at projects strategically from the work I did at Bain. And it was easy to go from that to Amex, but it would have been almost impossible to go the other way around.
Interesting. So with jobs, well, let's go to school. Back to school. So I know you have people who come to you and they say, how do I get into an Ivy League school? In some cases, how do I get into college?
Yep.
And perhaps which kind of colleges I'm qualified for. Some of the people you work for are from economically depressed homes, and they have been told that they don't have much of a chance to even go to college. And,
absolutely.
And you've worked with some of them. What are some of the examples you've got there?
So a couple of things. Some of the, especially the ones that you're talking about that are like inner city from families that are very far under the poverty level, but somehow in their schools, in public schools, where there aren't always great teachers, aren't always great support systems. The people who make money are the ones who are selling drugs on the corners. There's not a lot of motivation for people to even try and get a job that's a very long-term payout compared to their friends or sisters or brothers. But the ones who've kind of put their nose to the grindstone and studied are often unfortunately told by their college guidance counselors in the high schools that, well, they can't afford to go to a good school anyway, because as we all know, good private schools, the Harvards, the Stanfords, whatever, are very expensive. But what's unfortunate is that they're not telling them the truth that right now, all of those schools, starting with Harvard and Columbia and a couple others, have 100% financial aid that's blind. So it's not in the application process. You apply if you get in, it's 100% need-based, and if you fall below the poverty line, it's a free ride. So ironically, if they can get into a school like that, they actually graduate with much less debt than if they go to a state school, often, or to a school that's kind of in between. So what frustrates me is people who have the potential to go to, and whatever the highest school is for them, whether it's a community college or a Harvard, it doesn't really matter, but whatever the highest school is for them that they have the potential to go to, but they have people around them putting messages in their ears to convince them not to even bother to try. So that's what I work with people, to help them understand kind of the reality. Versus, and a lot of people say, oh man, I can't believe you went to Harvard, I could never get in there. And the first thing I ask is, did you ever apply? And often the answer is no. And I'm like, well, then yeah, of course you couldn't get in.
Well, let's talk about someone who did want to go to Harvard and who thought, in this case she, couldn't because of her SAT scores being marginally low.
Exactly.
And you thought, both for the benefit of this person as well as Harvard, it would be a great fit, even though she didn't qualify.
Absolutely. And her dream schools included Harvard and Stanford, and she's this amazing young woman that I've been mentoring for years, from a distance, but that I work with, over time, every year a little bit. And she had her college essay advisors and SAT coaches and all those things that almost all the students who apply to the IVs do. And her scores were low, but her extracurriculars are insane. And the impact she's won all different awards, whether it's from Coca-Cola or American Girl or whatever, all these different amazing awards for the work that she's done in the community globally. And she was told because her scores were bad, she couldn't apply. And I told her, that's crazy. That's not what they're looking for.
So what did you do for her?
I called.
That's the answer. You called the Harvard admissions office.
Absolutely, and I said, hey, we need to chat. I graduated a while ago from one of the graduate schools. I didn't go to undergrad, but this is the first time I've ever called any school about a student, because I believe in her that much. And then I told them why, and they were very happy to get that feedback. And then she ended up getting in early action and got into both her schools.
Very good.
And so ended up choosing Stanford over
Now,
Harvard.
where did you get that experience about having someone call on your behalf to get into college?
Well, imagine where could that have been. So it turns out that experience goes way back to when I applied to schools, and I was very diligent in high school, but I wasn't a straight A student. I was certainly like an A's and B's student, and I did fine, but I decided I wanted to go to Michigan, which at the time, and maybe still, was one of the most competitive, if not the most competitive state school for out-of-state students in the country. And they decided in all their infinite wisdom that I was a borderline child, so I got waitlisted. And I only applied there into one safety school, and the safety school happened to waitlist me as well, which was unfortunate for me. So I had, luckily, this father who was very insightful and said, waitlist, what does that mean? And called the school and asked, and that signaled to them that clearly I was really interested, because they have all these people waitlisted, so the few calls that they get proactively indicate, and then they can talk and say, so, if she got in, would she want to go here? And one thing that all colleges care about is their admit to acceptance rate. So they want to be able to brag that they have a more than 50% or more than 80%, whatever it is, that if they admit students, they're the school of choice. And by making that phone call, it signaled to them that if they took me off the wait list, I would be one of those that helps that pile. And so, of course, oddly similar to Bain, they said, yes, she can come as long as she starts in June. So I started the day after I graduated from high school, but I did go proudly to Michigan, and it was definitely because of my father's phone call. But I learned that lesson, and it's been the same really for me to do for others as well, and to encourage other parents to do for their children, whether it's, again, undergrad or grad school, or even for a job.
So you look for the gems, even if you don't think you qualify. You look for the gems in your resume or your background. You emphasize them, obviously, and you look for any little bit of help you can get, and you do solutions and you look for problems and you see how you solve them and you negotiate.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I tell people, especially that want to go to top schools, and again, whether it's undergrad or grad school, that schools really look on it, and this is my personal theory, but that schools really look at on a continuum of one or two things. They either want the people who are going to make the most money or have the most power. So you could go and run the Red Cross or go and be an ambassador and not make a lot of money, but have a lot of influence in improving the world around you. And they're going to choose those people. So if you have 3 times as many people applying that are completely equally qualified and all valedictorians or whatever it is for spots in the class, it's not that they're doing it in a way where they just want wealthy alumni, which doesn't hurt, but you want to give those spots to people who will use it best. So if you can signal in your application why you want to go there and what value that will have and what you will do with that opportunity, they want to give it to whoever will do the most with the opportunity. And so that's how I help people I've helped people in their essays.
So that's great for schools, but you also do the same kind of thing for people with jobs.
Yep.
Give us some examples of how you've helped people get jobs that they think they wanted or didn't even know they wanted, but did.
Right. Well, I mean, a couple of different things. First of all, it's the same as schools in some ways, is research. Like, you have to figure out where you want to be in the 3 to 5 year plan, and then what's going to get you there, who's successful in that now that you can align with. So one of the tips that I give people, if they're having trouble getting traction in what they want, is to go and figure out who you want to work for. That's maybe even 5 levels above the CEO or the vice president of a company that you hope to go in as a mid-level manager at. Where are they on the boards? What do they care about? Do they care about cancer? Do they care about autism? Do they care about whatever it is, puppies, anything? And if it's something that resonates for you as well, you have to be genuine. It's not about being fake. It's very important to be genuine. But when you find someone who you find that genuine similarity or similar interest, find out where they're on a board and go to that gala or volunteer at that organization. And the chances are that if you get passionately involved, you'll cross paths. And for more than a few people, that has turned into a job not only there, but at a higher level than it would have, or in a different, faster path than it would have.
You talk about tapping networks for career transition.
Yep. And in that way, so similar to that, so that's part of it, right? So tapping networks by saying, where do I want to be and where are they on the boards? Where can I have better access to them? We're more like peers. And then also, though, it's really important to always be building your resume. And even if you're in a job you love, these days it's not like a couple decades ago where employers are loyal, and probably because they can't be if they're public companies, the downsizings, whatever it is, but nobody's in a company for 40 years unless they start it themselves, and even then Steve Jobs got fired from his own company for a while. So right. You can be really good and brilliant in lots of ways, and that's no job guarantee. So even when you're happy, I always encourage people, if they've done something and gotten great feedback, it could be for a volunteer project for their boss, for an intern who wrote to them and said, thank you, that was so transformational for me. The first thing you do is say, I'm so glad you like that. Could you do me a favor and write me a recommendation on LinkedIn? And have a LinkedIn account. And if you don't, then get one. But make sure that you're always building, and you're building in the moment. Because if you wait 3 years till you need that, you can't call someone and say, hey, remember 3 years ago when I helped you? Could you maybe write me a recommendation? That's never going to be the same level of recommendation as if you do it straight away when they're passionately loving you. And that's part of the key to getting that next job, by having already built that foundation.
Okay, and one other thing I'd like to talk with you about is the work you've done for people with startups.
Yeah.
This is a little bit of information about you. Tami Kesselman, Solve for Good is a website that people can check you out and hear some more or see some more of the kinds of things you're doing. But let's talk about the work you've done with people who've looked for startups, and especially some of the interesting ones, like this person from the Philippines.
Yes.
What's that about?
So I've had the opportunity to work with some of the social entrepreneurs who inspire me the most, and among them is Fabien Cousteau, who of course is Jacques Cousteau's grandson, who does great work with Plant-A-Fish and oceans. And then the other one that you mentioned one of the other ones is Eloc Diaz, whose organization is called Leader of Light, that people might have seen. It's this amazing idea. It's so simple. He grew up in the Philippines and came for graduate school actually to do a master's in urban planning here, and then was at Harvard doing a master's there, and while he was there about 5 or 6 years ago, a really bad flood happened. And he dropped out to go home and see how he could help, and came up with taking bottles out of the trash, just soda bottles, 2-liter bottles. And first of all, they started making schools out of them, injecting liquefied mud and making schools out of bottles.
And then, I know, I don't want to get into the product so much.
And then turning it into, well, I was going to say, and then turning it into what was simpler than having to teach people how to make schools, was to help anyone with an hour of introduction become a leader in their community for taking bottles, cutting a hole in the corrugated roofing in the slums, and turning that into like a 55-watt light bulb, so they don't pay any money for electricity during the day. And now they're actually putting solar rods in, so you can use it as a light at night as well.
And he liked you so much, you're now on his advisory board, if I'm
Exactly.
not mistaken.
A couple of those.
The last aspect that I thought we should talk about is the balance between life and work.
Yes.
So, and I know beside what you do here, you're also very active in leading cheerleaders in the Wilton School District.
That's right.
But would you talk to us a bit about life balance?
I live vicariously through my 6-year-old niece and all of her cheering. Yes, I think that one thing that people get really frustrated with working, especially the type of consulting jobs where you're working, or where you're commuting, so you might be working 8 hours, but traveling 2 hours on either side, and people feel like there's no balance. And I think that what's important is to remember there's ways to have balance, to find minutes in the day. Like, everybody commutes, whether you're walking 10 minutes or you're taking a train for an hour or driving for 2 hours. There's things like iTunes University that are completely free, that you can download to your phone, to your iPad, to your iPod. I'm sure there's Android equivalents. And so pick any subject that has nothing to do with work, whether it's a language you always wanted to learn because you want to go on vacation in 2 years, or something about a cooking show. It could be anything about anything, but something that's just to expand your horizons and feel like you're doing something different. And then also, again, to volunteer somewhere that for some reason has resonance with you other than your current job, even if it's just to do it on a Sunday afternoon at a soup kitchen.
Very good. See, I do listen to you.
Yes.
And it's a pleasure to get to know you even better. You do so many interesting things, and you didn't get into some of the things that I consider among the most interesting. But we have run out of time because this has been so much fun. So I have to say goodbye, at least for now, at least on television. And the same to our audience. Thank you very much. We have even more guests coming in the future that you will hopefully find as interesting and as exciting as the ones that we've had, including my lovely and charming daughter here today. So Tami, thank you very much. It'll be a pleasure going home with you tonight.
There we go.
I hope Mom likes this. Goodbye, and thanks very much for watching. See you next week.